Ladies and gentlemen, I have a slightly different video for you today. A little bit of an experimental video, something that some people have talked to me about that they want to see. This video is going to be a lot about kind of for creators and devs of indie games, how to make effective press kits, and then how to use those press kits and use the resources available to you as a content creator to create good thumbnails for your YouTube videos. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that I in no way, shape, or form have all of the answers, and in a lot of ways, I'm not really a designer at all. I don't have any professional experience doing design. These are just going to be tips that I have kind of found by working on YouTube and making thumbnails. I made a massive change to the way that I make thumbnails in 2023, and I have the stats to back up that I basically gained 50,000 subscribers last year because of the changes that I made to how I do thumbnails and titles on YouTube. So I have a little bit of experience with doing it, and I want to share some of the things that I do personally in the hopes of helping both smaller content creators and some larger content creators that may watch this, as well as developers to make effective press kits and then effective thumbnails. So a little bit of an experimental video. I'll probably ramble for a good chunk of this, so I'll probably leave some timestamps for some certain things, but some of the things we're going to talk about in this video is how press kits are not super useful for content creators right now, how developers can make them effective, how you as a content creator can actually extract files from the game that you're playing in order to get super high-res photos for your thumbnails, and we'll go into basically 3 different extractors and how you can use those based on what the game's game engine is. And then we'll talk about thumbnail design and kind of how I view thumbnail design, and we'll look at a bunch of different thumbnails that I've made, and we'll talk about ones that were good, ones that were bad, how they performed, and kind of go into a little bit of detail on that. And it's going to be very, very kind of just discussion focused with myself since I'm recording this locally and not on a stream. So without further ado, let's get in. So the first thing I want to show you is I do make my thumbnails here in Adobe Photoshop. Now I know that a lot of you have opinions on Photoshop, and that's completely fair. I think that Adobe is kind of a garbage company as well, but Photoshop is a really nice tool for creators to use. Pretty much everything that I would do in Photoshop, you can also do in GIMP, which is a free photo editing software. There's only one thing that I do occasionally use that I'll talk about a little bit later. That's actually one of the AI features in Photoshop, and I know people are going to have strong opinions about that as well, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. To start, I want to actually just dive in and take a look at some press kits, okay? And I got permission from these devs to take a look at their press kits, and I just want to kind of show you as a content creator what we look at with press kits and things that we want to see. So here's Revita, one of my favorite roguelike games of all time, hoping to see refocused sometime this year, hopefully. But Revita has a couple of things in their press kit, and there's just a couple folders on here. I've gone and extracted the ones that I want to mess around with. So here I have the fact sheet, the logo, and the screenshots. You can see fact sheet, logo, screenshots, and then this art tab here is this key art that exists right here. So if I open this, you're going to see this is the key art for Revita that they have posted in the press kit. We'll get back to those thumbnails later. They also have this fact sheet, which is this over here. Kind of useful, okay? This is just a PDF of some facts about Revita. There's a couple things that you could possibly steal in here. There's a nice little background image. Can maybe extract some stuff from here, but the reality is I want a little bit more, right? I want a little bit more if I'm going to make a good thumbnail. So we got logos. We got the game logo. Big, nice Revita logo here. Not too exciting, just something we can put on there. And then we have screenshots from the game. And these are just screenshots from the game. Could you make these into a thumbnail? Absolutely. But here's one of the issues with press kits right now in the content creator space. When you use a press kit, you're basically going and making the same thumbnail that a bunch of other content creators are going to make. So let's switch now to a really good press kit, okay? This is a really good press kit. This is Tiny Rogues' press kit, and there's a lot of fantastic things in here. You can see all of the links to all this, but it's also all listed below here as well. So you've got your logos for Tiny Rogues, you've got a couple of screenshots for the game, a couple of GIFs for the game, and then you get into the meat and potatoes. You got some really good splash art here. You have a bunch of the characters in the game noted, not all of the characters. There's 32 characters in Tiny Rogues. Here in the press kit, you got 10, right? You have some enemies. Again, note that it's not all of the enemies. It's like 4 bosses and then like 10 regular enemies. So if you need a specific boss, you don't really have it. Then you have some of these awesome high-res character images, which I think are really cool and super useful. Pay attention to this one right here. And then we have some other things, you know, little Tiny Rogues, art, logos. These are all your Steam photos that are going to show up in the databases and such. And then finally we have this background art, and you can pay attention to this as well. It's really nice to have background art, and when we get into the thumbnail design, you'll see why, because you need something in the background, something that isn't super intrusive to kind of tie together the rest of your thumbnail. But when you have a nice press kit like this, you feel not only obligated to use it, but you're, as a content creator, sometimes a little bit lazy, okay? And it's easy to just take a press kit and pluck out what you need and make a thumbnail. So I'm gonna show you a couple of Tiny Rogues thumbnails that have been uploaded in the last 24 hours. And this is not my way of hating on any of these creators that have uploaded these videos, but it's more of a showing you how this connects, okay? So here's YouTube right now. And here's some thumbnails that were put up 19 hours ago, and I'll zoom in here for you so you can see them a little bit closer. You'll see here that this thumbnail here is pretty much that exact press kit, right? It's all of the pieces of that press kit. It's the background of that press kit. This is a completely fine looking thumbnail. In fact, I'd argue that it's a very effective thumbnail in showing Tiny Rogues. The issue is that since you're taking the files straight from the press kit, you scroll down, you're gonna find a lot of people that have the exact same thumbnail as you, or just slightly different thumbnail as you, because everybody's using, okay, I mean, he's a little bit of a different case in terms of thumbnails, and we may talk about things like this later. But you'll find a lot of people with very similar thumbnails out there. And it's just because you have people using the same press kit for their thumbnails. So what do I do, right? Here's one of my thumbnails, which frankly, I don't really like this thumbnail. It was effective. It had a pretty good click-through rate, but that's mainly because people are now knowing to come to me for Tiny Rogues kind of situation. Here's what I do with press kits and making thumbnails at this point. I don't use them. I just straight up don't use press kits. This is a really nice press kit. It's really awesome. But what if I'm making a run where I have a character that's not listed right here? What am I going to do? And this is where extracting the game's assets comes into play. So for those that don't know how game development works, there's a bunch of different engines that can be used for games. And if we take a look at Tiny Rogues here, you'll find that this is where your Tiny Rogues files are located on your computer. So wherever you host your Steam library, I throw it on my E drive. You will see Steam library, Steam apps common, and then inside of this common folder is all of your games that you have currently installed. So you can scroll down to whatever game it is, and these are the game files for your game. Now, if the game was made using Unity, you're going to find Unity Crash Handler 64, you're going to find unityplayer.dll, and then you're going to find a folder that is likely the name of the game _ data. And inside of this is a bunch of what looks like resource files and assets, but none of these are necessarily readable to you without some kind of extractor. So that's where an extractor comes into play. This is what I use. This is a beautiful, beautiful free software called Asset Studio, which I will have a link for in the description down below. This is a free open source application that is hosted on GitHub right now. And what Asset Studio does is basically can rip Unity files to get the resources out of them. You can also get other things like audio clips and fonts and things like that, but I use it for texture 2Ds right here, which are basically any PNGs that are inside of the game. So how do you use this application? This is it now installed and on my computer. We can do a file load folder, and in here we can go to our E drive once again, Steam Apps, Common, and we'll scroll down to Tiny Rogues. And inside of the Tiny Rogues folder, we're going to want to click on your Tiny Rogues data folder and then hit select. And what this is going to do is crash a lot. So this is a weird issue with this software that I've found. It's going to think that it's crashing over and over, and it's going to give you a bunch of OKs on here. Here's what you can do. You can basically just hit enter and click through all of these crashes. It could crash upwards of 100 times, depending on the complexity of the game. Typically, kind of 2D roguelites are not as complex, so you don't get as many errors like this. But sometimes you will click through a lot of them, and you can see that I am clicking through quite a lot of them. What will happen eventually is once it has clicked through all of the errors, it's actually going to load this completely fine into the software, and you're going to be able to navigate around and export all of the sprites that are in here. You'll see the progress bar has now moved pretty dramatically to the right, and momentarily you are going to find that it is completed. So now we have all of our assets. We can go to this asset list right here, and here is all of your assets inside of Tiny Rogues. Pretty difficult for you to look at it from here. So what I like to do is filter by texture 2D. This gives you all of the normal textures in the game. And then I will just scroll to the bottom, hold shift, highlight them all and click, and then right click and export. And this is going to export those assets to your computer to a folder of your choice. So now I have a Tiny Rogues folder on my computer that is all of my thumbnails that I've made for Tiny Rogues. And here's that texture 2D folder. Inside of here is now every asset that exists inside of Tiny Rogues. Do you want Megadeth? Well, here's Megadeth, right? In his prime. Maybe you're looking for a certain character. Maybe you just unlock the pirate in Tiny Rogues, and we can remember that the pirate did not have a sprite here. So how do I find the pirate? You can just search this folder. And here's a tip for searching. If you use an asterisk is basically a wildcard inside of your search bar. This will catch anything that has the word you put in the asterisk in any part of the picture's name, right? So if we just search pirate and add another asterisk, you will see here's our pirate for the sprite sheet, and we can open it up, and there's the pirate, right? Now you may look at this and you go, Tyler, that looks pretty blurry. I want a high-res photo. Don't worry too much about that, okay? When we open back up Photoshop here, and we grab our sprite and we drag it in, if you have nearest neighbor turned on or off, one of the two, you'll see that sprite is completely clean inside of here. And now you can mess around and grab everything that you need to make an effective thumbnail. So having all of the sprites in the game makes it so much easier to make thumbnails, because now you have the ability to grab anything. Do you need a specific weapon? Here's all of the equipment that's in Tiny Rogues. Maybe you need a certain boss. You have all of the bosses here. Here's your dragons. Here's your angels. Maybe you need the background objects for each floor. Here's your tiles for each floor. Chests up here. Anything you can find is in here, albeit that you have it named correctly, and this is where the developer comes in, having your files named correctly to be able to find things. I like to bring up this one as a little fun one. Dot Age is a game that I absolutely love, right? And I've talked about Dot Age a lot on my channel, and I've talked to the developer about this very thing. The Dot Age files the dev had used a naming convention for his files when he had first started out making the game, and has since kind of changed it. A lot of his files are basically a number, a letter, and then a string of 5 numbers. So there's so many files inside of this game, and most of them are completely unintelligible as to what it is. So searching around inside of here is extremely difficult. But it's still effective. You can still find everything that you want to find inside of here. It just takes a little bit longer to find it. So what if your game was not a Unity game? What happens then? So there's 2 other game engines that I tend to see while I'm making content on indie games. First is Unity, second is Gamemaker. So what if we took a look at Gamemaker? I have it here, right here. So Revita. Revita is a Gamemaker game. And how do I know that it's a Gamemaker game? You can tell if there is a data.win file inside of the Steam library folder for your game. What data.win implies it's a Gamemaker game. How do we open these data.win files? Ironically, the best way that I've found to do these is with the Undertale mod tool. So Undertale was coded in Gamemaker, so people that wanted to mod Undertale went and made a Undertale mod tool that is basically just an unpacker for Gamemaker Studio games. So this is your best tool that I've found for doing this. If we open it up here, you'll find that you can just go to File, Open, and then here you will open your data.win file. I've already opened the Revita data.win file in this window. And then the most useful thing to do is to go to Scripts and then Resource Unpacker. And here you can basically export all sprites, export all textures, and this will dump all the textures to a file. So now I have in here my export textures. I will warn there's going to be a couple of spoilers when I click this folder, so if you haven't played Revita, close your eyes for like 10 seconds. Here's all of your sprites for Revita that you can now unpack. So we went from a press kit that has like 10 things in it to all of a sudden I can build a thumbnail using any asset that I need, anything that is custom made to the run that I have just done. And it gives us a lot more flexibility as a content creator to build something that is unique and stands out on YouTube. The last game engine that I tend to see and is rising rapidly in terms of popularity is Godot. So Godot, one of the games that I have played that is a Godot game is Brotato, right? And the way that you know quickly that you're using or playing a Godot game is that you will have a .pck inside of the folder for that game. What I tend to use for these Godot games is, once again, another free GitHub tool. This one is a little bit more complicated to install because it's going to require having Python on your computer, but it's pretty easy to download Python. You can look up a lot of tutorials for how to do that, and then you can just use the unpacker like this. So you'll open up a command prompt, you'll go Python, your .py that you download from this page, and then your .pck file. So I have a little example here. Here's Python. I have it installed. Here's where I'm storing that Godot unpacker.py file, and then we can actually just grab our .pck here, drag and drop it into here, hit enter, and it is going to unpack all of the assets of Brotato into an output folder that tends to get stored on your computer in your user's, whatever user you currently are. And you can specify this folder, but it defaults to here. And then if you just sort it by type, you will find these all tend to export as .webp files. And they're all here, right? And if I wanted to, grab the infamous Tyler item in Brotato that is based off of me, I can come in here and I can grab the Tyler right here, and now I have my Tyler ready to go. So 3 different ways to unpack game files using these 3 really awesome tools: Asset Studio, the Undertale mod tool, and then the Godot unpacker. Maybe we talk a little bit now about actually making thumbnails and how, as a creator, you can effectively make thumbnails. So I have some examples for thumbnails that we can look at here. And we're going to start with some of my older Tiny Rogues thumbnails. Since we're talking a lot about Tiny Rogues today, let's take a look at some Tiny Rogues thumbnails. So this is a thumbnail from my first Tiny Rogue series that I did. This was a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, when Tiny Rogues had first come out. And there's a lot of things that are wrong with this thumbnail, right? It's fine. It's effective. This video got like 5,000 views, which is plenty. But there are ways you can make this thumbnail a lot better. And here at the bottom of the screen, I have the title of the video as well, just as a little reference point. So first things first, let's take a look at the background of this thumbnail, right? This is a lower res photo in the background, and this was basically just me screen capping my gameplay from the video and then putting it into the background. It's not very exciting, right? There's nothing that is complementing everything else that is going on the screen. It's also difficult when you're looking at YouTube, and we're going to go back to YouTube here. Most of the time people are going to be scrolling quickly through YouTube. And what I've found is that you want to have thumbnails that kind of focus your eyes in the center, so that as you're scrolling, you're very, very quickly focused in the middle of that thumbnail. So you want to kind of make sure that when you're making thumbnails, you don't make them too busy. There's actually a beauty in making a more simplistic thumbnail that kind of gets straight to the point. Right now, my eyes are kind of jotting around in 3 different areas. I have something over here on the left, I got something in the top right, and then I have something in the bottom right. So my eyes don't know where to go, and they just keep jumping between all of them. There's no real cohesiveness to this thumbnail. The other big issue with this is colors right now. Here we have a Tiny Rogues logo that is yellow and orange. We've done good in matching the yellow and orange to the text that's in the bottom right, but then we go to the left and we have this bright blue that just stands out like a sore thumb. So now your eyes gravitate towards these go together, but this is on its own, and you're once again separate in your kind of vision of looking at this thumbnail. So then we have one final issue with it, and it's more of an issue with your title in this point. So when you're making a YouTube video as a content creator, your thumbnail and your title are 2 tools you use to get the viewer to click your video. The content that's inside of your video, it may be horrible, right? Maybe you're just not quite good enough at making content yet. And that's fine. We all start at kind of that place, and then you improve by doing it over and over and over and iterating on your commentary and things like that. You need to get the person to click before you can even get them to view your video. If your thumbnail and your title are not enticing enough, they're not going to click on your video. And that's why there's a stat that is shown for content creators called your CTR. And CTR stands for click-through rate. And that basically tells you, here are the number of times that your video was seen in like impressions, meaning that it was shown on a page to somebody. It may be the sidebar, it may be in the search results, it may be on your homepage and your recommended. How many times was it seen and how many times was it clicked? And that number of clicks over your number of times seen is your click-through rate. And on YouTube, you tend to want to have above a 3%-ish on your click-through rate. Anywhere from like 10 to 7 is insanely good. Anything above 10 is like absolutely incredible. It's very, very rare to get above 10. And I think the average on YouTube is around 3%. So when you're looking at your thumbnails and you're posting videos and you're looking at that click-through rate, you want to try to get the highest click-through rate possible. This video here has about a 2.3% click-through rate, which is it's not very good. And I've talked about a lot of the reasons why. But one of the other things is you want your thumbnail and your title to speak and tell a story to the person that is looking at your video before they even watch it. And right now, our title and our thumbnail are not speaking to each other. They're doing 2 completely separate things that is actually just the same thing. Here we have the legendary Zweihander, right? That's our title, and here's your game, Tiny Rogues. And then you look at the thumbnail, and it's the legendary Zweihander in Tiny Rogues, and you go, okay, you already told me that. I don't need to know that again. You want to have it be where if you look at your title, it tells you one thing, and then your thumbnail gives you a little bit more. Or the opposite. If you look at your thumbnail, you go, oh, now I need to look at the title, and the title gives you a little bit more. You need the two of them to talk to each other. Giving the same information in your thumbnail and title is not benefiting anybody. So let's take a look at one of my new Tiny Rogues thumbnails that I've done now that I've made changes to how my thumbnails function. Here is my new Tiny Rogues video, my first of the new Tiny Rogues update. This video has 130,000 views, which is a lot different than 5,000 views. And here's why, right? One, it stands out from other Tiny Rogues thumbnails that are out there. It's not using any of the press kit images. It's not using any of those kind of default textures. Instead, we're taking our idea of focus all of your effort into the center of the screen and let the eyes kind of gravitate towards the center while providing a background that helps to tie everything together. So looking at your thumbnail versus your title, here's our thumbnail. It's an overwhelmingly positive game. It's got these nice pixel art sprites. I need to know more about this, so I look at the title. The title says, you need to play Tiny Rogues. And now I know, hey, this is Tiny Rogues. It's an overwhelmingly positive game with pixel art graphics. And then they may look at, oh, this is from Olexa. He's a roguelike content creator. This is probably a roguelike, right? And now they know a lot of information about the game that they're about to watch and click on when they see this. Let's move to another example. Here we have another Tiny Rogues thumbnail. Very, very similar issues with this. First of all, very lazy thumbnail on my part. I have used the exact same image in the background as the previous. If we look, it's the exact same, which is just lazy thumbnail making, right? Then we do the same thing. We have the text in the title, and the same text is in the thumbnail. It's not teaching us anything different, which is important to do. And then finally, we have this nice bright yellow stroke, which helps us really well to kind of tie in the yellow over here. That was the issue with the blue last time. But now we use a yellow stroke on the chain chomp here. And the issue is that yellow stroke is not the same size as the stroke that we put on the character, so it just looks off a little bit and can definitely be improved. So moving to the same character in my new series, here's a new thumbnail, right? It's time for the fencing barbarian in Tiny Rogues, and now we have a nice thumbnail that just doesn't teach us a lot, but it's a front and center of the character. Here's the game in the bottom right. Here's the sword, the fencing sword that we're going to be using as the barbarian, and it's just kind of a thumbnail that helps to complement the title. This video did not do as well. It did not get 120,000 views, but this is like the 7th episode in my series, whereas this was the first episode in my series. And when you have pulled in a bunch of views on your first couple episodes of the series, you can afford to get a little creative with your naming, because now you're building a series that isn't necessarily meant to pull in a bunch of new viewers, but instead continue to keep those viewers that are watching you for Tiny Rogues. So some more examples. Here's a thumbnail that I made last year for Brutal Orchestra. Really, really awesome game. You can see a very similar vibe between this and my original Tiny Rogues thumbnail. Here we have the overwhelmingly positive again, and we're using kind of the YouTube rule of thirds. Now you can look up the rule of thirds. This is a photography skill that is used to kind of where you place things in a photo. You want to have kind of a grid, and I'm going to attempt to draw it here. You want to have a grid on your photo that is basically evenly splitting your photo into 9 sections, and you want to make sure that you have a point of interest kind of at these intersections on here. I don't think that this is as effective to do for YouTube videos, solely because, as I said, you kind of tend to just scroll, right? So you want to grab things that immediately catch your eye in centers, right? So like here, my eye is immediately caught on this thumbnail. It's very busy, don't get it twisted, but everything is front and center, right? Whereas we go up to like this thumbnail and there's nothing in the center. Everything is on the left or it's on the right, which can be a little bit of a deterrent for my eyes, at least, is how I see it. So here we have the same thing that we did in the thumbnail for Tiny Rogues, where we have kind of 3 things in the middle. It's my rule of thirds that I do, is put 3 things in the middle and kind of just give it a nice centralized look. Our background is not very busy. It's just from Brutal Orchestra, some funky art that exists in the game. And another tip that I tend to do for thumbnails is abusing the outer glow. A lot of people tend to do drop shadows. Drop shadows are good depending on the art of the game, but sometimes an outer glow can go a really long way. So here I did a small white stroke on these characters and then added the blue outer glow that kind of makes this pop out at you. If we didn't have the outer glow, this would look very flat, and the glow helps to add a little bit of texture to this thumbnail. As for the title versus the thumbnail, the thumbnail helps to show you, hey, this is overwhelmingly positive. Then we bring that back in the title, but we add that next little piece that helps to tie it together, which is unknown roguelike, right? This is a lot of text for us to throw on the title, but we can slip in the Steam image that has text, but everybody sees it as it's a picture from Steam, right? So it has effective text while still being good in a thumbnail matching with its title. This video has about 300,000 views on YouTube. Highly, highly effective, has about a 5% click-through rate, and your click-through rate is going to drop over time as you get more and more views. Here's another thumbnail that I wanted to bring up, and this is one that I love, right? Because this is a very, very interesting little thumbnail. This was from my Baba Is You series, where all of my thumbnails I tried to turn into the Baba text in the game. And the title of the video was exactly what I had in the thumbnail, right? Baba Is You, Olexa is not rock. Here's the issues with this thumbnail. Is this a well-designed thumbnail? In my opinion, yes, it is a well-designed thumbnail, but this is a very, very niche thumbnail, right? You look at this, and if you're not already following my Baba Is You series, and maybe you're just looking for Baba Is You content, Olexa is not rock is not making you click on this video. There's no incentive for you to click because this is kind of a design thumbnail just for my channel, right? And you may get some clickers just based off of liking the thumbnail design, but it's not effective to bring in new viewers that want to know what Baba Is You is about. Using your own personal branding inside of your thumbnail is sometimes not very effective. So save all of your custom art and your custom assets that you have gotten for your kind of YouTube avatar. Use them for stuff like this, where you can pop up little things during your video that help to brand your video to your own kind of personal brand instead of putting them in the thumbnail where people are just scrolling aimlessly and don't have the energy to kind of look at, oh, that's Olexa. He's the guy that made the video. They're just going to see Olexa as text and go, I don't know what that is, and they're going to keep scrolling, right? So it will work for some people, and one of the people that I tend to bring up for something like this is like Wanderbot on YouTube. Wander has some amazing custom art that he creates for his thumbnails, and now he's known for it, right? And he's collected a following of people that expect that kind of art in the thumbnails, and they know that they are getting a quality Wanderbot video from his channel when they see his art in the thumbnail, and that's where it's super effective. Once you can create a following that is expecting that kind of art, and that goes back to when we were looking at like Northern Lion. He's created a brand where his thumbnails are not very good, but his face is plastered on it, and everybody knows who he is, so this video is going to get, 20,000 views in 24 hours just because his head is plastered onto the thumbnail. For smaller creators, frankly, you gotta work harder to get your videos seen because you're not iconic like a Northern Lion head is, or a Wanderbot image, or a Retromation branded, I know he's up here somewhere, branded text with the Rito logo on the top right and the white outer glow around the outside of the video. He's created a brand for himself that people expect here's a Retromation video when they see it, and he's built his entire channel's thumbnails around that exact style, so people are used to it and it's highly effective for his channel. Let's get back to some more thumbnails here. This video, by the way, had a 2% click-through rate, which is very, very bad, right? Very, very bad. Here's another video from me. Every time I get hit, the roguelike changes. This video has over 500,000 views on YouTube, and this is one of my most effective thumbnails of all time. Once again, focusing on your efforts being in the center of the screen. Rule of thirds for YouTube, for Tyler, right? On the left side of the screen, if we grab our markers again here, left side of the screen, you have an Isaac. Middle of the screen, you have an Isaac. Right of the screen, you have a Gungeon. And your thumbnail tells a story, right? Here's an Isaac that is normal. Here's an Isaac in the middle of a hurt animation. Here's an Isaac that is now in pain. Here's a Gungeon icon in a hurt animation. Here's a Gungeon icon not in a hurt animation. You're seeing a transition. Your eyes are going left to right on this, right? In the background here, we have an Isaac background. In the background here, we have a Gungeon background. Then we split it with a nice little line down the center to kind of show you, hey, you're making that transition from this to this. If you look at the thumbnail initially before you look at the title, you're going to go, okay, what the heck is this? We're going from the Binding of Isaac to Enter the Gungeon. What's the title? Well, every time I get hit, the roguelike changes. And you go, oh, so when they get hit in Isaac and you see the hurt animation, they're going to turn into Gungeon. That sounds interesting. I'm clicking the video, right? It's a highly, highly effective thumbnail for this style. When this video first came out, my click-through rate was about 8% for this video, which is very high and very good. Let's go to another one. This one, significantly less effective. So this was our next iteration of the Every Time I Get Hit, the Roguelike Changes series, where this was one where the roguelike changes through history. And it was meant to be kind of a timeline going from the first roguelike to ever release in Rogue, going to 2023 where Brotato hit its 1.0 release, and in the middle were a bunch of other roguelike games. And I thought that this was a really effective thumbnail, kind of doing a timeline of games coming out. The reality was, this had a 3% click-through rate, which was okay, right? But it was not as high as what I wanted it to be. And this is what you can do as a creator sometimes. When you get that initial metric and you're looking and you see 3% and you're in the first 2 hours of your video coming out, it's not too late, right? You can still change your thumbnail on YouTube. So I changed it. And I changed it to this, and we're once again seeing me implement that rule of thirds Olexa. I figured let's put a big Isaac kind of in the middle. We'll get two other extremely popular roguelikes, Slay the Spire, Enter the Gungeon. Put them on the left and right of Isaac. Put this up on YouTube. Waited 2 hours. That was a 2.5 click-through rate, which is worse than our original. This was not effective in the slightest, and I was confused. I thought that these were good thumbnails. Sometimes you make thumbnails that are just not effective, and it's good to bounce them off of other people and kind of gauge what people think about thumbnails. I ask my community all the time about thumbnails, and they give me feedback on which ones they like more than others. So I changed this thumbnail again, and I swapped it to this instead. Roguelikes Through History, 1980 to 2023. In the background, you can see a nice blurred image of each of the games that we play throughout it. Effective enough to show the difference in the games and kind of display, here's where we're going, 1980 to 2023, telling a story through the thumbnail. You look at the title, Every Time I Get Hit, Roguelike Changes Through History. Everything is pictured here without needing to know, and this is where I think there was an issue with these thumbnails. I don't need to know any of those games in the background. Maybe I've only heard of one of them, so I see 5 of those games and I go, I don't really care about any of these games. I only know Enter the Gungeon. Whereas here, now you're appealing to something different, which is roguelikes instead of those individual games. This now has a 4.5% click-through rate. which was a 2% increase from that last one. This video has over 120,000 views and continues to grow daily. So there's a lot of things that you can tweak with your thumbnails as you continue to kind of mess with them and create new things with them. And it all starts with the assets that you're given by developers. So I guess this is probably the end of the video now. I've talked for 40 minutes, rambled on and on and on about various things. This is post-video Tyler jumping in because he forgot something that he was going to talk about. Let's talk about that AI thing in Photoshop that we were going to discuss. I have a nice tab here. This is a game Voidago that came out last year in its full release. Really fun action roguelike. And one of the things that was in the Voidago press kit is this image here that is amazing, right? This is a really, really nice high-quality image, but it's not 1080p, right? It's not in that 16:9 frame that we really like for doing YouTube videos. So we find ourselves in a position where we either want to extend this frame, right, and make it really, really big, but this just looks fine, but it looks a little bit off, right? Instead, what we can do is we can utilize a really cool tool in Photoshop that I now use a lot, and this is in the new Photoshop versions, called the generative fill. And this actually, it does use AI, so for those that do not like AI, I guess just look away, but it's not using AI besides a nice fill tool, basically. When you select a region with your marquee tool, you want to include a little bit of the image and then cover up any of the other white space. And when you do this, there will be a little button here for generative fill. Now, this is where you could type in certain things that you want to generate, and it will query every artist that has ever made art and try to use their art in here, which is not morally good and I disagree with. But if you just hit the button that says generate, what it will do is it will actually take the surrounding area and attempt to replicate it in the white space, which is extremely, extremely useful for filling out images that are not the proper 16:9 that are needed for thumbnails. And you're gonna see that it's pretty highly effective once it finishes. Of course, now it doesn't finish when I'm doing a damn demo of it. You little goober, can you please finish this time around? I promise I am connected to the internet. When it finishes, you will see that it's very effective in doing this. Please, you could do it, generator. What a demo, honestly, what a demo. Okay, let's try again. Get it work this time? Pretty please. Cherry on top. There we go. Okay, so now you have a nice filled out image that is a little bit AI-y, right? Like the knees down here are kind of weird. There's a little blob over here, but this is where you can then go in. You can, kind of clean up stuff like that, and just kind of work with the Photoshop tools that you're used to in order to make things kind of work the way you want them to. So it's a really useful tool, albeit AI, so you tell me whether it's a good tool or not, but it is something that can be super effective for me. For developers, hopefully you learned a little bit about how creators can use your press kits effectively, how you can name your files effectively so that creators can pull stuff out of the files and use them for thumbnails, how you as a developer can use some of these same kind of practices for thumbnails and making your own kind of assets on the Steam page and things like that. A lot of this still follows where you're trying to get people to click into your game. If you don't have a very effective image displaying your game on the Steam page, nobody's ever going to click on your game and they're not going to see the amazing gameplay that you've made. So there's a lot of things that are shared between developers and content creators here. And hopefully for content creators, you guys learned a little bit about extracting assets. That's really the big one here. Making thumbnails it's always going to be difficult. It's always going to be challenging. I find it easier and easier every day, and I still have thumbnails that tank and don't do well, and videos that don't do well. And it's just part of being a content creator. So don't get discouraged by it because it is frustrating. I am not the master of all the knowledge. Like I said, there's creators out there that are doing things way better than I am doing them. but I've seemed to found a little bit of a groove and found a style that works for me, and I wanted to share some of that with all of you, so that we can hopefully get some higher quality content out on YouTube for everybody, and see some kind of advancements in the YouTube content creating space. So thank you for watching this. Sorry for rambling. Hopefully this was helpful, and if you have any questions about anything, you can leave them in the comments down below, and I'd be happy to answer them and provide any feedback and answers that I can. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.